Hello everyone, I'm Silent Death, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, Science Harder Campaign. As I mentioned I was considering last time, I have installed Kerbal operating system. So the first thing we are going to do today is do a few tests with that. I've picked up a basic equatorial satellite contract and slapped on a Kerbal operating system part, and we're going to fly up using this plane here, deploy that satellite, and try a couple of things. Probably the most concerning thing, or the most pressing issue, is finding out whether or not we can load scripts after it has launched, to determine whether we need to have all of our scripts written before we send a probe off to Dres, or if we can add the scripts after the probe has launched. Hopefully it will be the latter, as that would make things much easier, and we could do the few things spread out between many episodes instead of having to do them all right before we launch. As I don't know how up to date the documentation for Kerbal operating system is, I'll also need to test a few other such commands. But first, let's get this satellite up into orbit and complete the contract. We have completed our satellite mission, and also landed the space plane, which I did not show. Now then, we can do some tests with this operating system stuff. We have a couple of scripts. This one just prints hello world. Whoops. Exit. That's the wrong thing. Let's try that again. There we go. So this will clear the screen, toggle the brakes, which is what the antennas are connected to, are set up as an action group. The idea being that we'll sever our connection from the RemoteTech mission command. Then we're going to wait 10 seconds. We'll switch to 0, which is the archive. Then we'll run the hello world script, assuming that we can actually connect to it. Then we'll switch back to 1, and then reactivate the antenna. That is a test to see if we can access the hello script that is on mission command. This may not be entirely correct, but we'll find out. So let's run test. There goes the antennas. And there goes hello world. So we can, in fact, access things when it is not connected to a satellite, or to RemoteTech, when it's out of communication range. That is what I'm trying to say. Which means that we do not need to write all the scripts and have them ready before we launch our mission off to Dres. We can just launch something and then work on the scripts one at a time as we do other things. So I won't be coming back to this probably anymore at this episode. We have all of these transfer burns to take care of. And we may go ahead and launch this, possibly. At the very least, we want to get rid of, or take care of, a couple of these missions. So let's start doing some of these correction burns. First up is the dynamic Duno refueler with a tiny 2.5 meter per second burn. Just trying to get the periapsis on the correct side of the planet and as close to equatorial as we can, so that refueling will be easier once the dynamic Duno gets there. Next up, we have the short-range ComSats. The ones for our Omni antennas. And again, doing the same thing there. Getting the periapsis on the correct side of the planet and trying to get it equatorial. Which we do a pretty good job too. Last up is the long-range ComSats for both Duna and Ike. And we have a little bit of an encounter with Ike there, which makes this a little bit challenging. A lot challenging. After a little bit of fiddling, I decide we'll just adjust the orbit later, if it's going to be that way. Doing all those mid-course correction burns has caused me to realize we can do something better with this inter-system communication satellite. What we can do is change its orbit so that it is just inside of Kerbin's sphere of influence, so the apoapsis is. And then instead of having the dishes at Duna, etc. target Kerbin, we'll have them target the satellite directly. And that way we don't have to worry about the cones missing the satellite that are pointed at Kerbin. And we'll also be outside from behind the planet the vast majority of the time. We are also launching the Dres probe. We're actually going to launch 2 Dres probes. I expect that one of them will probably be destroyed when it tries to land on the side of a mountain or something when it gets to Dres. So having a backup is probably a good idea. I was going to do 3 instead of just 2, but these are about 70k each, and we don't make it that much from the Explore Dres contract. At least I don't think we do. So we're just going to go with 2 and hope that that's good enough. It only has some thermometers and seismometers, which is not a whole lot of science, but we just need something to get enough science for the contract. And we'll send a manned mission out to Dres at some later date. Our transfer window from the moon to Minmus has also arrived. And we'll be sending this station to land on Minmus so these guys can get a little bit more experience. And probably be used for future missions to other planets. the base race with the B team has finally exited Kerbin's sphere of influence, and now has to go back so that they can land and let all these guys level up. Trying to get a moon encounter to help us slow us down. Which we seem to have managed. As it turns out, the B team has enough fuel for a gentle re-entry without having to encounter the moon. Thankfully, because the transition removed our encounter. And now our periapsis is at 50 kilometers. Which should be enough to get us slowed down a little bit. Have to take multiple orbits, because this little thing is not going to be easy to land. It doesn't have the appropriate amount of heat shielding. We may in fact lose from here back due to the lack of heat shielding on that, but we'll have to wait and see. The base that we launched last episode, the solar base, has made it to Minimus, trying to land somewhere along the equator, roughly, to make it easier to leave the planet, or the moon, so that we can exit Kerbin's sphere of influence from there. We hope. So let's just do this burn. And then we'll come in for a landing. After some quick flag planning, the solar base vessel is flying off to solar orbit to finish its last contract. Jimby and Seaman have finally finished their downtime. That means we can launch the permanent base for Minimus, which is this craft. At almost 200,000, it is not particularly cheap, but we're bringing up a lot of extra fuel and a lander on top, so that we can use this to take all the rest of the science from Minimus and bring it back. Well, not bring it back, we need to send another craft to bring it back. Since the Minimus base is going to be supporting mini missions, we want it to leave a Kerbin with full fuel tanks. So we're launching a refuel mission, which is this. Unmanned. We don't want to use up any of our pilots and have them be doing downtime, especially none of the ones that don't need experience for getting to Kerbin. It did something a little bit different with the nose at the tip there. It's a 2.5 meter to Mark II adapter, then a Mark II to 1.25 meter adapter, and then a Mark I tail section on the very tip. Since we don't have any 2.5 meter nose cones yet, hopefully we'll get those sometime in the near future. But we had that, and we had the good speed fuel systems, fuel pumps set up to drain those tanks out first, so that we could use that getting through the thicker atmosphere. And right below it is the docking port, so that it can dock to the Minimus base. Don't have quite enough thrust weight right after we get rid of the last of the asparagus stage, but once we start burning up fuel, things get a little bit better. I did make one mistake in not properly setting up all of the fuel tanks with the good speed priority things, meaning that when it docks to the base that does have the good speed fuel priority set up, all the fuel from the base is going to pump into this, and also, most importantly, all the RCS is going to pump into this. Which, given we don't have that much RCS on the base, not a good thing. But we do eventually manage to get caught up, and then dock to the base. The final thing for this episode is to send off our Dres probes. A very, very long journey, almost actually a little bit over a full carbon year. They'll be inside of our communication range for a little while, but once they get a little bit outside of Duna's orbit, then they will be outside of our range, and we will not be able to control them any further. So we'll be spending some time in the future episodes writing scripts with some test Kerbal operating system probes, probably using the moon as a ideal test thing. Has somewhat similar gravity. But that is going to be it for this episode. Like if you like. Subscribe if you're not. Leave a comment if you have anything to say. I do read all the comments. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.